Snowflakes drifted down through the night sky, melting as they hit the dim glow of streetlights. The city was a blur of movement, honking cars, flashing billboards, and hurried footsteps. But in the corner of a forgotten street, time had stopped. A young woman sat huddled beneath a cracked bus shelter, her body curled around a tiny bundle. The thin blanket around her baby barely held back the biting wind. Her lips were trembling. Her breath came in sharp, shaky gasps, and every exhale formed a small puff of fog that disappeared into the air. Her fingers, purple from cold, gently brushed her baby's cheek. "Shh, it's okay, Eli. Mommy's here," she whispered. Though her voice broke on the last word, the baby whimpered weakly, his tiny fists flailing inside the thin wrap. She looked around helplessly, at the shuttered shops, the empty streets, the glowing windows of cafes where warmth and laughter lived, but no one saw her. No one ever did. The last bus had passed hours ago, and she'd been walking for miles, searching for a place to rest, a place to hide. Her shoes were soaked through. Her clothes clung to her from melted snow, and her stomach had been empty for days. She pressed her cheek to her baby's head and tried to hum, her voice a frail lullaby that dissolved into the wind. Her eyes stung from exhaustion, her body aching with every heartbeat. The memory of a hospital, of a nurse telling her she couldn't stay without insurance, flashed in her mind. She'd begged, pleaded, but rules didn't bend for desperation. Now she was out here alone, holding on to the only thing that mattered. A loud honk startled her. A sleek black SUV rolled past, its headlights cutting through the snow. She ducked her head quickly, clutching Eli closer, as if afraid light itself could hurt them. The car slowed a little, then stopped. She froze. Her pulse quickened. Maybe they'd tell her to move. Maybe they'd call the police. But the car didn't move away. Inside, through fogged glass, a small face appeared, a little girl about 6, wearing a red wool hat and a curious expression. The girl pressed her palms against the window and looked straight at her. For a long second, they just stared at each other, the lost and the safe, the cold and the warm. Then the girl turned toward the man in the driver's seat, tugging on his sleeve with both hands. Her lips moved quickly, and even from across the street, the woman could read the words the child said. "Daddy, her baby is freezing." The man looked up, his dark eyes following his daughter's pointing hand. When he saw the woman in the snow, something changed in his face, a flash of recognition or maybe memory. He didn't hesitate. The SUV's door opened, and the cold night. Air swirled around her as tall, black boots stepped out onto the icy ground. She panicked, trying to shrink into the shadows. But his deep voice carried through the storm, calm yet commanding. The woman's breath came in, uneven shivers as the man's heavy coat fell around her shoulders. The fabric was thick, rich, smelling faintly of cedar and something warm she hadn't felt in months. Safety. Her lips parted, trying to speak, but no sound came. The man's presence was steady, the kind that made her want to collapse and cry from relief. He studied her face quietly, noticing the cracked lips, the sunken eyes, the way she tried to shield her baby with her own body. "How long have you been out here?" he asked, voice low, serious. She shook her head quickly, clutching the baby closer, her fingers stiff and trembling. "Please, I just need a little place to stay for tonight," she whispered, her voice nearly lost to the wind. He didn't answer right away. He looked toward the car where his daughter pressed her nose against the window, her breath fogging the glass as she watched anxiously. The girl pushed the door open before he could stop her and ran toward them, her tiny boots sinking into the snow. "Daddy, she's really cold," the girl said, kneeling beside the woman without hesitation. She reached out her small hands, carefully touching the edge of the blanket around the baby. "He's a baby, right?" she asked, her voice filled with innocent worry. The woman nodded weakly. "His name's Eli," she murmured, brushing the baby's cheek with her thumb. The little girl smiled gently, then tugged off her own red scarf and started wrapping it around the baby's tiny body. "Here, it's mine, but he can have it. I have another one at home," she said with a proud grin. The man's chest tightened as he watched his daughter's pure kindness, the same kindness her mother used to carry. He reached out, his gloved hand resting lightly on his daughter's shoulder. "Lily," he said softly, "let's get them somewhere warm first." He helped the woman stand, steadying her as she swayed. Her knees almost buckled, and without thinking, he slipped an arm around her to support her weight. She tensed at the touch, instinctively protective, but then she met his gaze and saw nothing but concern there. No judgment, no pity, just quiet strength. They moved slowly toward the car, the crunch of snow beneath their feet the only sound. Lily hurried ahead and opened the car door wide, holding it like a little hostess. "Come on, miss," she said with a smile. "You can sit next to me. I'll help with Eli." The woman hesitated at the sight of the luxury SUV's sleek interior. It felt too clean, too perfect, too far from her world of cold pavement and sleepless nights. But the baby whimpered again, and instinct overpowered pride. She climbed inside carefully, clutching Eli close. Warm air enveloped her instantly, making her gasp softly as the numbness in her fingers began to fade into painful tingling. Lily climbed in beside her, gently adjusting the scarf around the baby's face. The hum of the car engine and the steady rhythm of the windshield wipers filled the silence as they drove through the storm. The city glowed faintly outside the tinted windows, neon lights blurred by snow, shop signs half buried under white drifts. The woman sat stiffly in the back seat, still clutching the baby as if the world might snatch him away at any second. Every so often she glanced toward the driver, unsure what to say, unsure why this stranger had stopped when no one else did. The little girl Lily sat beside her, whispering softly to the baby, her small fingers gently brushing the edge of the blanket. "He's really tiny," she murmured. "I used to be that small too, right, Daddy?" The man's eyes flickered toward the rearview mirror. "Smaller," he said with a faint smile that quickly disappeared. The woman's gaze followed that reflection. His face was sharply defined, strong jaw, calm eyes that carried something heavy beneath them. He looked like someone who had everything, yet there was a quiet sadness behind his expression that she couldn't quite understand. The warmth of the heater seeped into her frozen skin, and slowly her body began to thaw, bringing with it waves of exhaustion and emotion she'd held back for too long. "You don't have to take me far," she said finally, her voice hesitant. "Just somewhere near the main road. I'll find my way." His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "You and that baby won't be wandering around at midnight in this weather," he said evenly. "You'll come with us for the night." She stared at him, startled. "With you? I can't. I don't even know your name." "Ethan," he said simply. "And you?" "Maya," she whispered, her eyes lowering. "Maya and Eli," Lily beamed. "That's a pretty name. Maya, can I hold Eli?" The woman froze for a second, then slowly nodded, adjusting the blanket and handing over the baby carefully. Lily held him with surprising gentleness, her face glowing with awe. "He's warm now," she said proudly, then looked up at her father. "See, Daddy? He likes me." Ethan's lips curved in a faint smile that reached his eyes this time. Watching his daughters, joy stirred something long buried inside him, something that had been silent since his wife passed away 3 years ago. Lily had been his reason to keep moving, but he had built walls around both of them, keeping the world out, afraid of more loss. And yet, here was this fragile woman and her baby, sitting in his car, stirring life into a part of him that had been numb. The drive stretched on quietly. When they reached the edge of the city, tall buildings gave way to cleaner streets and high walls dusted with snow. The car pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a modern glass tower. Maya's eyes widened as she looked out, realizing this wasn't just a house, it was wealth beyond anything she'd ever known. "You live here?" she asked softly. Ethan returned from the kitchen, carrying a tray with 2 steaming mugs and a bowl of soup. The aroma filled the air, rich and comforting, something that made Maya's stomach twist with hunger she tried to hide. He set the tray down on the coffee table, the firelight flickering across his face. "Eat," he said simply, his tone gentle but firm. She hesitated, glancing between him and the food, her pride battling her exhaustion. "I can't pay you," she murmured, her voice barely audible. He shook his head. "I didn't ask you to." His calm certainty broke her resistance. She reached for the spoon, her fingers still shaking as she brought it to her lips. The warmth spread through her like life itself, melting the cold that had settled deep in her bones. Tears blurred her vision, and she lowered her head so he wouldn't see. But he noticed. Lily sat cross-legged beside her on the rug, gently rocking baby Eli, humming softly. Her soft voice filled the room with something pure and fragile, like sunlight after rain. Maya couldn't remember the last time she'd heard laughter that wasn't cruel, or kindness that didn't ask for something in return. She watched the girl's small hands, her smile, and felt her chest ache. "You're good with him," Maya said softly. You must be a wonderful big sister. Lily shook her head, eyes wide. I don't have a baby brother. But maybe Eli can be my practice one. Ethan chuckled quietly from where he stood, leaning against the counter. The sound made Maya glance up. It was the first time she'd heard him laugh, and it startled her how gentle it was. As the night deepened, the wind howled outside, pressing snow against the wide glass windows. Inside, warmth glowed in every corner. Maya sat wrapped in a blanket that smelled faintly of cedar and soap, her baby asleep in her arms. Ethan watched her from across the room, studying the peace on her face, the way her shoulders had finally relaxed. There was something familiar in her exhaustion, something that reminded him of his own night spent staring at the ceiling, holding on to pain in silence. When she looked up and caught his gaze, neither spoke. Words weren't needed. In that quiet, the storm outside faded, leaving only the soft crackle of the fire and the fragile comfort of being safe. At least for one night, the morning light crept softly through the tall windows, painting the room in hues of gold and pale blue. Maya stirred awake, momentarily confused by the warmth around her. For the first time in weeks, she hadn't woken to the chill of concrete or the harsh noise of the streets. Instead, there was silence, gentle, peaceful silence broken only by the faint crackle of the dying fire. Eli slept soundly in her arms, his tiny fingers curled around her blanket. She brushed his cheek and exhaled shakily, unable to believe the night before had been real. The faint clink of dishes drew her attention toward the kitchen. Ethan stood there in a crisp shirt, sleeves rolled up, pouring coffee while Lily sat on the counter swinging her legs. She's awake, Daddy, the little girl chirped, her voice bright and full of morning energy. Ethan turned, a small smile tugging at his lips. Good morning, he said, his tone calm, steady, like someone used to giving warmth without asking for it back. Maya sat up quickly, embarrassed, her hand flying to smooth her tangled hair. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to fall asleep here, she said softly. He waved a hand dismissively. You needed it. He nodded toward the table where a plate of toast and fruit waited. Eat something before you go. She froze at the words, before you go. A lump formed in her throat. Of course, he hadn't meant for her to stay. She looked down at Eli, who yawned, tiny and unaware of the world's cruelty. Thank you, she whispered, her eyes glassy. For everything. I don't know how to repay you. Ethan's gaze softened as he set his cup aside and walked closer. You don't owe me anything, he said quietly. Just promise you'll take care of him. Lily slid off the counter and ran to Maya's side, tugging her sleeve. Can we see you again? She asked hopefully. Maya blinked, caught between heartbreak and gratitude. Maybe, she said, her voice trembling. Ethan watched the way Lily clung to her, the way the baby's hand reached up as if recognizing safety. Something stirred in his chest again, the same quiet pull he'd felt last night. You don't have to rush, he said finally, his voice low. If you need a few days to figure things out, stay. The world can wait. Maya looked up at him, stunned. No one had ever offered her time before, only deadlines. Threats and doors slammed in her face. She nodded slowly, tears slipping down her cheeks. Thank you, she whispered again. Lily clapped her hands, thrilled. Yay, Eli can stay. The man smiled faintly, shaking his head but not correcting her. As sunlight spilled across the floor, warming their faces, Maya realized that somehow, in the most unexpected place, she and her baby had been given a second chance, proof that kindness still existed, and sometimes it wore a suit and had a little girl with a heart big enough to change everything.